Deltarune Snowgrave Route is the alternative story path of Deltarune, often compared to Undertale's genocide route, that offers a darker telling of the story than your usual playthrough would. I, however, could not tell you much about it, because I will never play it. Okay, granted, I could tell you some things about it through spoils I've seen, but not much in terms of the finer details. See, I only played Deltarune Chapter 1 all those 7 years ago! I've officially hit dunk status. And when Chapter 2 released, I just didn't quite have the interest at the time, despite Undertale being one of my favorite games ever, saying I'd get around to playing Chapter 2 later on. But later on never came, because I am just that lazy, which you can tell by my upload schedule. But with the release of Chapters 3 and 4, I thought what better time to replay the game from Chapter 1 and all the way through until the latest one. After beating all chapters a month or two ago, and even doing a second playthrough recently, I can safely say that I was correct in my prediction I made in this video 7 years ago, because Deltarune is damn close to overthrowing Undertale as the far superior game, purely depending on if the ending is better. If it can't make me cry like this sprite of a hug did, then I don't want it. But despite all my love for these new chapters, besides my immense praise for the game and how desperate I am to get my metallic claws on Chapter 5, I still refuse to play the Weird Route. I'm not sure if this is a controversial statement, but it does contradict myself in many ways. One being that I'm desperate for more Deltarune content, and two, because I had no issues completing Undertale's genocide route, despite that being way worse. I mean, realistically, one is killing an entire race of people in an underground civilization, while the other one has Chris decide to torture this poor innocent deer girl. I mean, why, Chris? Why did you do that? But I have two of what I consider reasonable reasons that people such as myself may not want to tackle the Weird Route. Starting with the first, Deltarune's relationship with the player. And hey, if you're enjoying the video so far, then how about considering subscribing? It really does help me out. Also, it should be worth noting, this video will be spoiling important aspects of Deltarune and Undertale's story, so if you haven't played either of them, get out! Before I talk about Deltarune's player relationship, however, I want to look into the difference in the way Undertale handles its player relationship. It's often been a debated topic here and there of whether or not the player is truly an entity within Undertale, and it's easy to see why, as Undertale isn't upfront about it in the same way that Deltarune is, but the player is very much a real entity within the game of Undertale. This is extremely clear when after booting the game up post-true pacifist ending, Flowey appears looking directly at us, the player. After a little cheeky wink wink nudge nudge to another possible ending for the players who don't use the wiki or YouTube to find out all of their information, he pleads with us saying,
"So please, just let them go. Let Frisk be happy. Let Frisk live their life."
It's this line that confirms Flowey is indeed talking to us, the player, and that Frisk is 100% their own independent character. So this merely confirms that this is the case. But here's the biggest difference with Undertale and Deltarune. In Undertale, it doesn't feel that way at all. Frisk as a character is a weird one, because they're hardly a character. Here is more or less everything we know about Frisk. One day, they tripped and fell down into the underground. 10 out of 10 right in, Toby Fox, you've done it again! Of course I joke, and this is indeed a purposeful design choice that I am not criticizing in any way. It's standard for your typical RPG game and works perfectly for Undertale. But Frisk doesn't complain about what we're doing, even if that is genociding an entire species of monster. They don't have any real personality. I mean, they literally just have standing and walking sprites with some slight variations thrown in between, and this all makes Frisk the perfect vessel for the game. Get out of here, Gaster! So with Frisk taking the role of a pure stand-in for the player, the only real ways we can feel bad when doing the genocide run is through the guilt of our own actions. Whether that's killing a beloved character, the harrowing sight of an empty town abandoned in fear of you, or the stomach-turning feeling of when we open the game back up after Chara has killed us. These things can make the player feel bad, but in my opinion, it was never enough to ever turn me off from playing through this ending. After all, it still feels like a video game, and it is far easier to ignore us, the player, being a present being in Undertale. So when we go over to Deltarune, this is immediately not the case. As we go through the creation of our vessel, our work is cut short and we are placed into the body of Chris. Already, this feels off and wrong in many ways, which is just the beginning of how much further Toby has taken the concept of the player being a character. Chris is a lot different to Frisk, with most obviously, unlike Frisk, there is a lot of lore we can learn about Chris. This goes to the small smaller, more obvious things like how their mother and father, Toriel and Asgore, were divorced a while ago. Their brother Asriel went off to college, and Chris has a lot of childhood friends in the town that they have history with, most notably being Noelle. But as we play more, we discover even more about Chris, such as their love for playing the piano, their love for chocolate milk, or their strange affinity for knives. Yeah, Chris is kind of a weirdo, I won't lie. The point being is Chris is a character that is full of personality and history that we are now inhabiting against their will, to the point that Chris has no qualms ripping out their soul, the very culmination of their being, just for mere moments of free will, or to go assist the roaring knight. Chris hates the player, and their resistance to things we do ranges from the less subtle, like when we try to force Chris to read an anime review, to the more harrowing, where they'll take a bite of their own hand just to stop them saying something bad that we tried to get them to say, and even going as far as to actively work against us with the game's antagonist figures. It feels wrong and can easily make the player feel disgusted with themselves when the character that we play as despises us, truly bringing into question how deep the connection can go between a player and their character. I'm not sure if many other games have done this besides Off, but it truly does make Deltarune a standout. But in the grand scheme of things, this isn't too bad on the player, because all we have to do is do good by Chris and try our best to do things the way they want to, and even though they still will hate us, at least for now, perhaps that hatred will lessen, and we can just about live with the guilt of being what's essentially a teenager's poltergeist. But then comes the Weird Route, and this shit is not gonna make Chris hate us less. The entire point of the Weird Route is for the player to break the game. The overall purpose for this is unclear for now, but what is clear is that to advance in the Weird Route, we have to pick the worst options, commit the most heinous acts, and overall become a terrible person to advance throughout this. I think the most obvious scene to point out my disdain for doing this route comes in Chapter 4. After this scene, that a lot of the internet misinterpreted to be something much worse than it actually was, marking somewhat of the point of no return in my eyes for this route, we see Chris take out us, the soul, and this happens. For me, this single scene is the only one I need to use as an example for why it feels 10 times worse to play through the Weird Route when compared to the Undertale genocide route. Despite all the awful things that we do in that run, it's never as if Chris looks into the camera and says, "Yo, that was fucked up, bro!" But Chris, in direct response to our actions, delivers what can only be described as the worst domestic abuse case in all of gaming. Why are you mad at me? Chara made me do it! Jokes aside, there is a huge difference compared to when another NPC tells us we're an awful person versus our very own character we are playing as showing such a level of hatred and malice towards us because of our own actions. For me, as someone who enjoys all the characters in Deltarune, I see no major joy in doing this run and would rather just replay the normal route over and over again, as I already have. Sure, I'm missing out on extra content, I'm not getting my money's worth, but that's my cross to bear. And for me, I do not want Chris to hate me. That may sound a bit sensitive and corny, which, okay, I admit, it might be. But I'd rather say it shows just how well Toby has written the player relationship in Deltarune, when it's making me second guess how every action I do in this game, whether I perceive them as good, bad, or simply just funny, can have an impact on Chris and the other characters. But I'm gonna drop a plot twist here, because while I do think all I've just said is valid, and I do fully agree with it, I could be tempted to stomach through some of these scenes just to see what happens, like a curious cat who's also an unchecked sociopath, if it wasn't for my second reason, which I think is 100% a valid reason to at least hold off on the Weird Route for now, which is Toby Fox's knack for wall breaking. As is apparent for pretty much everyone who's ever touched all of Undertale, there is a lot of fourth wall breaking that takes place within the game. This takes many forms, such as how opponents will straight up tell you to press buttons when new mechanics are introduced, how Temmie will lower the cost of her armor each time you die, and the most extreme of characters like Sans and Flowey being fully aware of timeline resets, with Flowey having full memory of everything pre-reset. Like, they will literally make fun of you if you accidentally kill Toriel and reset your game for another chance to save her. I think we can safely say this is a true canon event for any Undertale player here. Now, of course, course, this is all fairly common knowledge, and you may be wondering what my greater point here is. Well, for that, we need to go and commit ourselves a little genocide and have our rather terrifying encounter with Chara. Refusing their deal of erasing the world will, to put it bluntly, slightly aggravate them, as we are effectively killed off and our game is forever bugged. By doing this evil run, we suffer the consequences and can never play the game again, or so some may have thought when initially experiencing this. Because when you actually wait 10 minutes, Chara reoffers the deal, and accepting it relinquishes your soul to Chara. Now that we've done that, we can play our beloved game normally, and a player may think this is now a chance to set some things right. And as you play, it may appear that nothing has been altered as a consequence for this. But presuming you do the true path this run again, which, let's be honest, is the happiest ending, so this is what most people will do. It's only at the ending of this run that our consequences are truly shown. If we tell Toriel we want to live with them, then the usual ending changes to reveal that Chara has now taken Frisk's place. It could be debated whether this truly is malicious, as Chara is a complicated character. Maybe they just missed their stepmother. As for if you tell Toriel you have people to go back to, you're treated to this. I don't know if it's possible to interpret this as anything else but Chara killing all of these characters. So, because we completed the evil route of this game, we must now permanently live with the consequence of the good, true pacifist ending forever being unobtainable. Okay, well, I say unobtainable, but you could just delete your game files, but damn it, that's cheating! It's a brilliant design choice, as it wasn't like the game for the entire Genocide Route's playthrough wasn't trying to warn us and to deter us from completing this run for this exact reason. But nope. We were curious, we wanted to see what happens, and now we must bear these consequences that now permanently affect our game. So the question we should be asking is, what is stopping this from happening with the Weird Route? Now, it's hard to fully predict if this will be the case, as there are so many parts to Deltarune that complicate this, such as the true nature of the prophecy, whatever's going on with Gaster and Friend, and of course, the fact that Deltarune is confirmed to only have one ending. That latter one is important though, as it could seemingly nullify all of this together. After all, if there is only truly one ending, then of course, how could it affect the outcome? That would be if it wasn't for one interesting detail that kind of hints that Toby could have been lying about this, and that this may not strictly be true. If we go to look at the Steam page for the game, it's listed as ... only one ending? Which frames this as if there is a very good chance that there is more than one ending after all. Even more interesting than this is the fact that this was only added to the Steam page after Chapter 2, aka when the Weird Route is first introduced. So to say this and the Weird Route aren't linked would be a bit ridiculous. Even more interesting is the line that's spammed and tells you in the Weird Route itself.
You think bacon
Frozen chicken.
with your
Side chick.
is gonna let you drink up that?
Sweet. Freedom sauce.
Well, you right, but don't blame me when you're
Crying.
in a
Broken hole.
wishing you let your old pal Spampton
Kill you.
There is no way Toby put this line into the game to troll us. And what Spampton is saying here about how we're doing this to achieve our freedom and that it will work, but we'd regret it taking death as the better option, shows that, at least to me, the Weird Route is going to change the story in some major ways. Whether that just changes the context of the one final ending, or perhaps this website page showing us these numbers, coincidentally relating largely to the Weird Route, show that this route could very well end in Chapter 5. It's very hard to say, of course, as we are missing 3 very big pieces of the puzzle. But as far as I think, with how Toby has handled fourth wall breaking with Undertale's endings in the past, I have very little doubts that doing the Weird Route will affect our games in a major way. Perhaps that time comes when, or should I say, if we ever meet Gaster. Or perhaps the context of the ending changes so drastically that it takes on another meaning, sort of like how it did when we made that deal with Chara back in Undertale. Either way, I do not want to play with fire and potentially ruin my game, without at least having experienced the base game in all of its glory. I could be wrong, and feel free to debate the idea of this in the comments below, but until there's any sort of confirmation that this isn't the case, I think I'll hold off, at least for now. This video hasn't been a criticism of the Weird Route, though it may be taken that way by some people who only read the title. In fact, if anything, this has all been a testament to Toby's writing. For a game to be so well thought out and written that it makes me second guess getting my entire money's worth is pretty unheard of. Who knows if some of the things that I talked about in this video will come to pass? All I know is that I'm excited to see what happens, and I can't wait for Chapter 5.